Hi, my name's Justin Knight. I'm going through RCIA, and I wanted to share with you all a little bit about my story. I was raised in a secular household. Um, Religion wasn't really brought up at all. The first time I heard about God or the concept of God was in about first grade. I heard some of my classmates talking about church, and having no experience with it, I I really thought nothing of it, to be totally honest. I had no basis in it. I had no idea. And then in 2001, I was 6 years old, um, and that is when September 11th happened. And immediately following that, the new atheism movement sort of took off, namely with Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins, and Sam Harris. So when I actually started actively thinking about these ideas, I had no exposure to any actual religious institutions, all I really had was this new atheism movement, and I got really into Richard Dawkins, like I said, Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris, reading. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Four Horsemen. It was like a DVD they put out. I probably listened to that 10 times. And so I sort of got this idea in my head, really grounded in this sort of what I would call scientism, namely the idea that the only form of knowledge that's worth anything, the only way to know anything is reducible to the scientific method. That anything outside of that, philosophy, religion, all those things are sort of a cute, pre-scientific, oddity in our modern age. And religion itself as, at best, kind of a quaint little hobby, and at worst, dangerous, violent, superstition. And that's the framework I viewed all religion and all religious ideas through. So kind of growing up with that mindset and seeing the world in this very sort of cold, nihilistic way, what do you strive for? You strive for wealth, honor, power, pleasure. And with those, those things can be fine. We don't believe that the world is some intrinsically evil, thing, and we should try to, separate ourselves from the world and only look to God. God created the world and it was good. But if you only have the world, as I did, you can only go for those four things. And I chased them, and I got into this lifestyle that was totally unbounded by anything higher than myself. So I was essentially my own God at that point. My moral framework was, I need to do what's right for me. What's gonna benefit me right now. Forget the future. That's just some abstract thing that doesn't matter. I'll figure that out when I get there. And I'd like to briefly say, I said I was raised secular. My parents are fantastic. I wasn't the best kid. I didn't take some of their teachings to heart in the way I should have. They did try to instill a lot of the things that the church teaches into me, and but I think because, again, they weren't grounded in anything higher, I saw them as just kind of, oh, take it or leave it. That's just one opinion. There's no objective morality. This is just one way of viewing the world. And I see all these people over here that look like they're having a good time. That's what I'm gonna do. So I just got to this cycle like I said, where I was just chasing these worldly things, and I found myself in a situation where I was just hopelessly in the throes of alcoholism. It started with, partying, going out, having what I thought was a great time. And that worked for a while, it was great for a while. And then at a certain point, I just couldn't live that way anymore. Waking up in that state every morning was just so hideous. But I didn't have the framework to change, because again, this is just, I'm making these choices. They're bringing me pleasure sometimes. Yeah, I have to pay for it other times, but whatever. In the end, there's no ultimate anything that is going to be. I'm not going to have to pay for this in any ultimate way. And eventually it came to a head where I just couldn't operate anymore, and I had to make the decision to completely abstain from all that stuff. I put myself in a program. I completely changed my life. But right before that, I started asking these questions again that I had when I first went to the New Atheist. And I remember I was driving to work one day, and I drove by the Catholic Church. And Catholicism had always sort of intrigued me. I think first of all, just because of what a beautiful religion it is. The cathedrals, Gregorian monks chanting. It just had this aura around it. And so when everything was falling apart, I had to look elsewhere, and I sort of almost just on a whim reached out to the RCIA team, and Betsy spoke with me. And this was last year, and a couple months into that, I checked myself into this program, so I missed a good chunk of that. So I was driving by, and I saw the RCIA sign, and I called up Betsy, and I remember it was this very room. I walked in, and I was just kind of like, what, this is so foreign to me. What is this all about? The sign of the cross, I even that was mystical to me. I mean, I'd seen people do it, but that shows you how unfamiliar I was with the whole thing. And I met so many great people immediately that were so unlike the people in my life that I interacted with. Wendy was so inviting and created a fantastic space. And I just really, after the first meeting, I knew that God had called me in for a reason, and I knew that He was going to carry me through this thing. Almost immediately, I can't remember how many times it was before, but we were asked to find a godparent, and Jan reached out to me and just kind of offered, and I wasn't expecting it. I was really nervous about, because that's a big thing, in the secular world, like asking someone to be your godparent. It's like, whoa, that's kind of out there. But she was so willing to do it. It really struck me as another piece of God's providence. And then Colette gave me a book called Jesus Always, with daily sort of little devotionals to Christ. And I started reading those, and I would read them, and I would kind of have this swell within me, and I could feel the presence. And it was so striking to me that this was happening, because I had come out of such non-belief, and so suddenly these things started working. And I was trying to square this with the intellectual stuff I had learned from the New Atheists. And I remember David introduced me to the Word on Fire ministry with Bishop Robert Barron. And I found this sort of link to this rich intellectual tradition within the church. And I just went from there. I ordered a whole bunch of books, G.K. Chesterton, John Henry Newman, Augustine, and I was especially struck by him, about his journey, and there were so many parallels to my own life. And unfortunately, because of the whole COVID thing, I decided not to go through with the baptism last year. And I'd like to add, one more thing. There's so much out there in the wider culture. Neil deGrasse Tyson's Cosmos comes to mind. This sort of, like I talked about, this scientific view. Not that, obviously science is great, it's made our lives immeasurably better. But this sort of view that's being put out to children and really everyone nowadays, that everything is reducible to the scientific method, there's nothing else to search for. That narrative is being pushed so hard. I believe it is so important, especially for young people, that they are exposed and that they really investigate the rich intellectual traditions spanning back 2,000 years of Catholic and Christian thought. That's something that was certainly missing from my childhood, and I would encourage anyone to go out and really find what's out there, because there's so much. And after a couple months, it was very obvious that I needed to take some time and get my body and soul healthy again. And coming in here and getting the tools that I got from the RCIA team was such a huge part of that, because I was able to come to God and He carried me through that process, and I don't know how it would have gone without that. And I am just so happy to be back, and I can't wait for this upcoming Easter.